Where do we start off?
Well,
The same place we always start off?
The same place we always do. In the beginning.
In the beginning, yes. In the beginning, there was Working Class Zeros.
Yes, and I think we're starting off with a comment that we got, right?
Well, we are, but I mean, let's introduce ourselves first. I mean, who
Do
are
they
you?
care?
Who
Do
are
they
you?
care?
No, I don't think in the world of zeros, does it really matter?
As a working class zero, we don't matter. But
we just
my
do the
name is
gigs.
Sean.
I'm Steve, the bass guy. And we're here with you with Bass Musician Magazine once again. This is our 5th episode of
Yep.
this. And we've had some comments, which are pretty cool. And we're going to actually start with one of our comments that we had, which I think is a really good point because, it makes sense. So
Right.
let's start with it. So we have, looks like from Frost River 4547 commented, I've been playing my Jazz bass, my Jazz 5, hold up, we got overhead, Jazz 5 Ultra since the 90s. I love it, but since I got my Modulus Quantum 5 about 10 years ago, the Fender usually stays at home.
The Modulus is a 5 as well, or?
I don't know. It didn't state that,
Okay.
but the comment didn't state that. But I think the question here is, and I think the overall thing is, I think he was going for the Fender side of that. But I think the bigger question here is like we get basses, and I know I'm like this. I love a bass,
Sure.
and then I get a new one, and then I love that one, and then I don't use the ones that I had before. I mean, I think we're all kind of guilty of that. Like, it's very hard to have a harem of basses, right?
Sure, absolutely.
And I feel like that's kind of the underlying part of that question. I think that's where we come from. Like now with the Working Class Zeros, is well, what makes one bass above the others? Is it just because it's new? Is it because it's better?
I think that's like the honeymoon period. The honeymoon period of a new bass, you're excited. Like this is something like, hey, I spent a good chunk of change on this thing. I want to show it to the world. You want to show everybody how cool it is. It's got these switches, it's got this cool preamp. Or maybe you went completely bare bones basic and it's like, I got like a vintage bass and you're just excited about it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, like I think what it's really getting back to is like, what are you comfortable with? What's checking enough boxes for you? And also, what are you doing? What are you doing with it?
Well, what happens once you get so do you warm up to this bass and go, well, you know what, I really want to go back to my last one? I've had that happen like once, almost never. It's always something new comes in and then those other things kind of go to the back, and it's like I always tell myself, I'm going to keep that because there's going to be a point I'm going to use this.
Well, to me, it's always been like, there's something that comes up, whether it's at a gig or something, where the new instrument didn't accomplish the task.
Right.
It didn't do what I needed it to do, and then that makes me always want to fall back to like what I was using that did check those boxes. And that's something where it's like, okay, yeah, like I keep all of that in mind, and then maybe like I can't ever get over that with the new bass, and it just becomes part of like the dust pile, like just a collection.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is like, so then comes the point of like, how long do you hold on to gear before you flip it? And I have a rule with any of my bass equipment is that if I sell a piece of gear, now this is a working class thing, is like if I sell a piece of gear, it's a very slippery slope because I've seen this, we all see this on Talk Bass and other places.
Sure.
Like, I'm selling this bass because I need money to repair my car or I need this to do something else.
Yeah.
Gear has to go to gear. That's just my rules. Like if I sell something, I have to put it back into either another piece of gear, or it has to go back into that so that the pool is replenished. Because if you go down that slippery slope, and we've all been there, and I've seen it happen, even like, and we all have I have medical bills, and I understand that sometimes that's just has to happen. It's like you have a piece of gear that you've been sitting on that's worth tons of money, or at least you believe it's worth tons of money,
And you end up
Selling
almost
it.
giving it away.
yeah, and then because you have to pay a bill. But my feeling is like if you do sell gear, try to keep it in the pool to make it go back to the next thing, so it's not just you're not constantly leveraging a credit card.
Yeah,
and
you'll
in debt.
regret those kind of decisions later on and whatnot. Say, oh man, I really just kind of gave that away for nothing,
Yeah.
type deal. But to get back to like the actual comment
Yeah.
at hand, what makes me want to go back to something that I was playing
Sure.
beforehand versus like a newer instrument? It's comfort, it's the sound of it. Maybe it checks the boxes better for whatever the type of gig it is. I mean, like you and I are P-bass guys, so
Yeah.
P-basses are very versatile instruments. they check a lot of the boxes.
They do.
And like compared to like doing something where it's like a Jazz 5, where like, you know, yeah, it's versatile to an extent, but like there's certain things that just can't do.
Sure.
You know, and I don't know, like a modulus. I feel like that's a little bit more niche, but if that's something that he's been playing for so long, his ear's attuned to it, he's used to playing it, it feels comfortable. There's nothing wrong with going back to that, and it's a solid bass.
Well, it sounds like he stayed there.
Yeah.
So to me, it sounds like they stayed there. So what happened was, you know, bass, Fender 5 from a Jazz 5 from the 90s, kept it for a long time. Obviously, at this point, you're talking about 30 some years.
Yeah.
And then picked up a Modulus 10 years ago, and the Modulus has been the go-to. And I think it comes down to, how do I separate from that piece of gear? At what point do I go, okay, well, this piece I'm just not going to come back to? I mean, I have a few basses. I have my Music Man, which is basically a P bass. I love that bass, and it's like I probably should part ways with it because I don't play it enough, but I just can't give it up because I like it. And it's like I've had people make offers on it, and it's like, you know, somebody offered me a Rick Ford, and I was like, nah.
Well, it's the same deal with like I have a fretless. I just never really play. I have it, but like
Yeah.
you know, and I'm always kind of holding out for that one time that's going to be useful for
Yeah.
at a gig. Is it ever going to really
like-
come up?
That's my Isola.
Yeah, exactly.
I
There you
hold on
go.
to my Isola for the same reason, because it's like, you never know. At some point, it's like, I don't want to drag out either of my acoustic uprights, you know, and the Takamine is cool, but maybe somebody wants that vertical, somebody to stand in the back.
the aesthetic.
Yeah, the aesthetic of it. So I just don't part ways with it. Plus, I guess Kerry Nordstrand actually built this one, so when he was working there. So it's another reason I like to hang on to it. But you know, so I think that, you know, that comes down to that separation. Now, my question is, because this kind of wraps around before we end out this topic, was, do you have a piece of gear that you wish you never separated with?
It's a good question. I think there, yeah, I would say there probably is like one that I should have probably held on to, and I think it was this like Franken bass that I got at one point, and it was like a Craigslist find, and it was one of those US Highway 1 Fender P bass bodies.
Sure.
And they had put a jazz neck on it.
Okay.
And it played really, really well. I customized that thing around to kind of make it a little bit more my own. I swapped out the pickup for like one of those like angled pole like Nordstrom like pickups.
Sure.
And it had a more of like aggressive kind of growly kind of a tone to
Yeah.
it. I put like a higher mass bridge on it. I don't know. The thing was really cool, but I don't know. At the time, I didn't really need it. So
Yeah.
then I just like, well, because I was always kind of like going from bass to bass. Now
Sure.
I've been playing the same bass for like, I don't know, my 5-string I've had for maybe 10 years now, and then my P bass I've been playing that for close to 4.
Yeah.
So like it's one of those things. Those are my two go-tos. I didn't need the other ones.
Yeah, so you kind of consolidated the stable of bases you
Yep.
had, which is not a bad idea. I think sometimes it's not a bad idea to condense and then expand, like we expand, and sometimes we expand and we decide to, you know, we add things in that we just don't fit the role. But you know, I think about like the one I let it get away. You know, there's
Yeah, I
like
know.
you let her get away.
I know which one.
Oh, my Federa.
Yes.
Yeah, I do miss that bass at times. I shouldn't have let that one get away. It was I was kind of like lulled into this other, and I think we all cycle through things that we want to try out, and I was really into this acoustic bass guitar, finding that right sound. And I love my Rebecca. I mean, that's where that led to, and I love that bass a lot. I still use it a lot.
Yep.
But you know, in the scheme of things, I probably should have held on to my Federa because it was so unique. It's
Yeah.
such a neat piece.
It was a one-of-a-kind one. Yeah.
It was. So was the Rebecca, different roles, different personalities. You know, just kind of. I wish I wouldn't let that one get away, but here we are.
Yeah.
You
all
live
good.
and grow. You know, it's
Yep.
just like, you know, sometimes she gets away.
Yeah. All good. All right. So then, the next topic.
So I was thinking the next topic, because we had it in there a while ago, which was the solid state versus tube amps.
Okay.
Because we were talking about that like on the gig. So what are the benefits of a solid state or a Class D switching amp, digital switching amp, versus a tube amp? What are the benefits and what are the detractors of that? Because some of the things that we have, sorry guys, I have my dogs here. My dogs are going to be in the shots.
It's fine.
I'm telling them. I think some of the benefits for having what are the benefits of having a lighter, more powerful amp? Sometimes we call them more powerful, but are they? Versus a tube amp, which with a tube amp, and then there's the hybrid amps. They have the two preamps, but they're missing they kind of miss the back end. It's like they have the turbo, but it's a 4-cylinder, right? And that's kind of how I see the hybrids, and there's some great sounding ones out there, but orally, do they actually meet the same needs? Now, what are the benefits of a digital switching or a solid state amp? What do you think?
But for me, it's definitely the portability, the weight. It's very lightweight. It's easier to bring in and out of gigs. Like if you're playing in like a downtown type setting, it's kind of a pain to like lug around a tubed amp because of the weight, the size. A lot of times, like I have my V4B like Ampeg, which that's fully tubed, and that is a heavy amp. And that's just the head, Then I have to also bring like the speakers as well, which is more units. Sometimes you can get like the combo kind of like solid state unit, which checks a lot of the boxes. You could like set up a DI with like the PA system, and then now you've got enough power.
Well, Fender does make that tube combo now too, which the Adam Clayton one, which is pretty
really?
cool, but it doesn't have a lot of power. I mean, I think that's the problem with it.
What's the wattage?
I think it's only like 25 to 30 watts, which isn't enough for a band, like a live band situation. It's enough for a practice amp or recording.
Sure.
I think of it kind of like it's a very nice sounding amp. It would work great in a studio or in a small practice room.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Will it work on a stage? Probably not. It just doesn't have enough. That's why, like when you're saying the V4B, like I towed out my SVT, and I've been toting my SVT, and I always keep 2 amps. I keep an extra amp in my car because that's the other thing is reliability, right?
Yeah, we'll get into that too.
And power sack, dirty power in the building. Tube amps are more prone to power surges, right? I mean, we see that. So depending on how the power is in the building, can affect what your amp sounds like. Now, if you're playing again, we're all working class, so the places we're playing sometimes you have one plug for the entire band, right? Other times you might be outside and they run an extension cord for you and it's coming from who knows where.
Right. Yeah. Played those gigs.
Yeah, we all did. Hey, it's a stage. There's some plywood on the ground with an extension cord.
Yeah, a few pallets. Here's a rug. Good luck.
Yeah, and that's always questionable. So I think the benefits though, like when you have a good tube amp and sure, you're gonna break your back. It's gonna be heavy. I'm playing a gig later on today at the Wooden Match, so I'm gonna carry it up. I think it's 18 stairs. To an extension cable. I'm running a power conditioner on everything though, so that's always helps a little bit. But I do it because I like that sound. I like the feel of it. I feel like there is a different presence with a tube amp versus a solid state amp.
Yes.
But I keep a digital switching. I have a Phil Jones amp that I keep in my car just in case something goes wrong, because it has.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's something you need to keep in mind as well when you're doing these types of gigs. Like for me, I keep I do keep a solid state in there, just like we were talking about before, having that backup. When I do use a tube amp, which the last time I played at the Wooden Match as well, I used my Ampeg rig, and there is a warmth to the tone, I think, that comes from the tubes and whatnot compared to playing just through a solid state. I feel like you get your tone, I don't know if it's faster or something like that, how else you want to describe it, but from a solid state, I feel like you can hear the tone a little bit more clear, up close, than with a tube amp. A tube amp, for some reason, you gotta really be, you have to have some distance, and you get the full the full sound of it. I don't know. For me, that's been my experience. Like the warmth is there, and like you can feel that difference.
There's a presence of it that's different than a solid state amp. I've had a tube amp go out and switch over to digital switching like within the same song.
Oh, yeah.
And you feel the difference. it's the same cabinet, different amps. You feel the difference. Even EQ'd the same. You feel it, and there is there's a difference. So you as you're using it, you're like, okay, the tube amps have a little bit more natural compression to them. The breakup is obviously different on a tube amp versus a solid state amp or digital switching. Also, the nice thing, this is just me, but tube amps and even some solid state amps, like a good Walter Woods amp, they last a long time. They're made to go the distance. Like you can have an SVT from the 80s that's still a viable amp and can be serviced. If you have a good service guy, that is like an heirloom project. It's going to stay with you. You can pass it on to the kids.
Yep.
Whereas you get a digital switching amp, like you get an Ashdown, because a buddy of mine, his brother is an amp tech, and when they get the digital switching amps in, actually it's funny. I guess one of the John Myung brought his Ashdown in for service, and he was like, "I can't fix this. This isn't repairable because the parts they're not made to go the distance. They're made to be used, and once they're done, you get a new one.
Yeah, you just throw it away."
But that's, I mean, in the scheme of things, like, do we want to be a throwaway society? I thought we were against that. Like,
I agree with that. If you can fix it, you should try and fix it. I know some repair shops are charging like a lot to like even look at those types of amps anymore.
Tube amp or
just solid state or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, like just like the hour for like the labor rate. The labor rate is just like really expensive. But they can fix a tube amp. You don't know if they're going to be able to fix it. You might just be paying the labor, like an hour of labor for them to come back and tell you, sorry, throw it away now.
So I think this comes down. So if you are going to go the route of the tube amps, because you just made a left turn into a place that I think is really important. So tube or even a solid state digital switching, you can't really fix, unfortunately. But with those two types of amps, like say your Walter Woods or your Ampeg, your SVT, something that's tube based, knowing an amp repair guy, go out and make that relationship.
Yeah.
It's like tattoo guys. You go out and your tattoo artist. You get to know them. If you're just going in and picking flash off the wall, they're going to charge you so much.
Right.
It's better to know the guy, have a relationship, so that they are going to know like what your price point is. So if they decide, hey, this is going to be expensive, they're going to be upfront with you about it, not just charge you or overcharge you.
Yeah, and tell you afterwards. It's like one of those kind of like shiesty mechanics.
Yeah. You want to
go charge you for that headlight fluid real quick.
Get the buddy price. And it's good. It's good to have those relationships because as a working musician, you have to kind of know what your resources are and understand how to stay working.
Yeah.
Because most of us can't afford to go out and buy another SVT.
And I would say also the one big difference that people should be aware of, which I'm sure most people are, but the wattage difference and like the power that goes behind these things.
Yeah.
Like I have a 100 watt V4B.
Yeah.
That's fully tubed. That is more than enough power than what you need for most outdoor gigs even. Like that is a lot of power that you have there. Your SVT 300.
Yeah.
Excessive amounts of power that you got there.
And it's funny because we always talk about 1,000-watt amps, and it's like you don't need it.
Yeah, well then when you go to solid state then, I have the Quilter Bass Block 800.
Yeah.
It's 800 watts.
Allegedly.
But it's 800 watts solid state.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like that's a totally different ballpark. That's like minor leagues to the major leagues almost when it comes to like the wattage.
And they overrate those too. A lot of times
yes,
that's peak
but that's
rating.
that's neither here nor there. I'm just saying that like they're claiming 800,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, that should be 8 times as loud
No.
by the same kind of like thought process. Like, it's watts to watts, right?
Yeah.
It's not.
It's
Don't
not.
get sucked into all that. Actually try out the amps, see how loud it actually feels and like gets like when you're like messing around with it. If you got a music shop by you, then you can try these things out. Great. If you got a buddy who's got one, cool.
That's
check
the better
out.
option.
That's the best one. Worst case scenario, you check out some reviews and get some honest takes, not someone who's like endorsed or something like that. Like, you want to get somebody who's like, hey, like I have one of these. This is my honest thoughts on it.
There is no problem with buying used either. My
No,
advice is,
yeah.
I like used equipment. I mean, obviously my 69 P bass.
Almost all my stuff's used.
It's,
Yeah.
it's better that even that you have that break-in period where it kind of gets the ability to kind of like season. I think gear seasons as you use it. So buying something used and having a good amp tech is life-saving. It's going to save you a lot of money. It's going to save you. It's just going to save you some time too. Because sometimes
Sure.
you buy something new, and you get something and you're like, okay, this isn't it, and then you're in the situation of having to flip it. That brings us back to the days of having the music shops. Unfortunately, music shops are disappearing again. They're still going away, and that was the place to kind of decide, well, is this right for me? And now now you're buying it from online vendors.
Yep.
And I bought something from an online vendor. It showed up smashed, and
Yeah.
I had to send it right back out.
It's very sketchy to kind of do that type of stuff. I mean, like, I've always liked using Reverb. Reverb is a great space to kind of like even just reach out to the seller to
Yeah.
kind of like see what's going on. Most times, if something comes back or you get something and it shows up broken, you can typically like send it back or get like a discount. You work with the people and say, hey, this is not working or whatever like that. And like, there's usually some give and take with that type of stuff.
I got to give a shout out to Musician's Friend too. I mean, like they've done that with me too. I bought because I have a Heritage. I have a Heritage SVT, and I bought one of the was it the 40th edition or 50 whatever the 50th edition, and it came smashed.
Yeah.
And I contacted them. They were like, no worries. Box it back up, send it back. And I was like, all right. It was very interesting. I've never had anything showed up broken in half from them like that.
Yeah.
But they flipped it around pretty quick for me and were like, hey, next time we'll give you a discount. So I was like, all right.
There you go.
I didn't buy it, but I kept the one I had. I like the one I
Right.
have. It works well enough.
So is there any other topics we're doing
I
today?
think that's it. I think those two. I think now it's just the sure, it's awesome, but is it necessary?
Sure. Do you want to use yours first? Or?
Well, why don't you go? You brought a couple different tools that I think are kind of cool. So why don't we start with
Okay.
those?
So I brought a couple of Zoom cameras, which I mean, like I think we've all seen these things advertised. We've seen them, like whether it's like musicians like sharing like their videos online or anything like that.
Well,
like
in fact, the
gig-
first couple videos we shot was with a Zoom.
Yeah, it was with the
Q8.
Oh, the Q8. Yeah, the Q8. Now, I have two different ones here, and the reason I brought two different ones is because, like I kind of upgraded from this one to this one.
Yeah.
But I kind of lean towards this one, and the reasoning is like, all right, so you want to be able to document what you're doing. Like when you're a newer musician, or like you're just kind of like a working class zero like us, sometimes in order to get the better gig, sometimes you need to have that resume of like showing like, hey, I've played these types of stages. Hey, I've played in like good bands, not just like the shitty bar band or something like that. You know, you want to document the fact that like, hey, I did something really cool before, and you just throw it up online and stuff like that. I mean, like, are those the most compelling videos? No, because they're very stagnant. It's just kind of like it's just showcasing yourself, but that's your resume almost.
Yeah.
Like you're creating a resume with a YouTube channel by doing something like that.
I agree. I think Adam Neely he talked about this a long time ago, was like video is forgivable, audio is not. And that's kind of one of the things that like I lean in, like I do like those cameras and I still do use them for a lot of like stage stuff, because the audio is better than the video on them, and the audio always comes out pretty good.
Yes.
So that is, the video is a little weak in my feeling on them, but having a good quality audio as a plane flies overhead, cutting into our audio right now, but having a good quality audio for whatever you're sharing is better.
No, so what I'll say is that I started with the Q2N. The things I like about this, it does have really good audio on it. The video is decent. It's perfect for just uploading to YouTube. You can do the 1080p and all that stuff. So like that, it's exactly what you need. I never upload in 1080. I was always 720 just because I could record an entire gig on 720, or actually I could probably record two gigs.
You could record a gig on 1080. 1080 is fine. 1080 is standard.
Yeah,
because
but
when you
like, I
think
guess
about
I
compression
was
rates-
using like I don't know, it may have been like the size card I had in here or something like that.
Yeah, if
but
you
it
had
wasn't
like a
enough
30
to do like a
if you had
3-hour
32
gig.
If you had a 32 gig card in there, you would run out of it. But you had a 64
I think it was a 64.
You should have had enough then.
Well, maybe
1080
it was
should have been
32 or something. But either way, guys, don't listen to him.
16 gig.
Don't listen to him. Listen to me.
Now, you want to listen to me? I was the one who told you about those.
Yeah, well, I ended up getting one of these, and honestly, like this right here, this solid unit, I think they were like 120 bucks.
They were. I think you get them like.
You probably get them cheaper now.
Yeah, I think they were like $80. It's
80 bucks now, or somewhere around there. This is really all you need, because at one point I upgraded to this. This has so many bells and whistles to it, and I'm not saying that it's not going to be cool and great for like if you want to do like like multiple mics and stuff like that. You got a couple XLR inputs, you got your XY mic up on top. This records in 4K. Not that that's really necessary.
Well, as soon as you put it onto video streaming or anything like that, it's going to be compressed and it's going to lose its quality.
Yeah, it's not going to ever really be the true 4K unless
No.
you take the time to upload that, which will take like a day and a half. But either way, like
and even on YouTube, if you're gonna share it through YouTube or like Instagram,
no one's caring about 4K.
They're not gonna put it in 4K.
They don't want to
anyway.
see the pox on your face. They just want to see. They want to hear you
Pox on
play.
your face. What is this, the Black Death?
I don't know the creators. I don't know the pimples. I'm just saying.
What is
it's
going
like
on here?
Super high def.
How-
Super high def,
Yeah, it's
Steve.
very close. Very close.
But yes, honestly, like this is perfect. This
Yeah.
is like like, and is it necessary? I would say for like a musician, kind of like getting out there and like trying to get their name out in an area, and they want to share videos of them playing. Yeah, I would say this is necessary.
Yeah.
Is it the end all be all of like cameras? No, there's tons of options. We were talking about that before. You know,
Yeah.
there's lots of different other options out there. But like as for like equipment, I would say this is a good go-to.
Yeah. Can I talk about this for a second?
Yeah.
So what I love about the Q2Ns, and you kind of didn't talk about this, is there is a standard mount on the bottom. So if you do have a tripod, you can
most of
adjust
them
it.
all
Yeah,
have
this
that.
not all do. So like when you're looking at like some of like DJI makes a camera mount, like some of those, and there's a difference between like the activity cameras, like,
No,
like
okay,
the DJI
yeah.
one. What's the other one? The
GoPro?
GoPro.
Yeah, GoPro is completely
Yeah,
different.
it's not gonna. Yeah, you don't want to go to a GoPro for any of your performance stuff. The quality isn't really there, and the audio is definitely
Yeah,
not there.
audio's no good for the GoPros, and then like they've basically patented their own mounts to where like you have to get GoPro equipment. So it's like if you go GoPro, like everything's going to be GoPro. So
correct,
this
correct.
is far more like adaptable.
Yeah.
Whatever like tripod you got, it'll mount.
And you can do two. I've already shot with two of these,
Mm-hmm.
and then what I've done is I have a couple different mounts that I can actually clip on. So I
Mm-hmm.
stuck one above the drummer once, aiming down at him while he's playing, and then I shot this one. I shot out from the front, and then I kind of put it picture in picture when I edited the video together for the band. Now there is a downside to this one versus this one too. This one has an onboard battery. Now the battery life on these is not great. You're not
Yeah.
gonna get a full gig out of this. So, but you can
Or
run-
that, like, you need-
yeah, this is two double A's. This is not going to get
it's,
you.
yeah, it won't,
Yeah.
it's not going to last long.
No. So what I found was that you can there is a the charging port on here. You can plug an external battery.
You turned it on. Yeah, you turned
Yeah,
it
I
on.
think I bumped it. Yeah, yeah, I bumped it.
But yeah, so what I always did was I bought an external battery, like you were saying,
Yeah, just-
and I would bring that, and like that would get me to like through like 2 or 3 gigs.
Yeah, you could, because if you run and it'll work on either of these, which is nice, because that you cannot do on a GoPro.
True.
And the DJI is very nice as well, because the DJI does have a lot of little fixes to it. But again, that's really, it's meant for more like an action cam versus these. These are made for musicians, so I feel like the microphones inside these are actually made. It picks up really well for like cymbals. It picks up really well for drums.
Yep.
Picks up bass really well. So when you go to have this as even just loading it, if you just want to do an upload really quickly on it, the quality is actually pretty much there.
Yep.
The video takes a little work. Like Sean said initially, is that you're using it as just like a resume filler, and for the working musician, this is probably a really good option. And you can buy 2 of these for the price of this, and you can actually use, if you're using an iPhone or an iPad or a Mac to edit your videos, there is a feature that allows you to do split screening. So when you load the 2 videos in, you can actually choose which audio you want to. Now, if you're going to mix the audio, that becomes a little bit problematic. That's my Apple Creative Pro.
You're gonna have to figure it out, guys. Whether
Yeah.
it's gonna be using GarageBand and all that stuff to kind of like do that.
Well,
but I would just
I wouldn't do GarageBand. What I would do is I would do Well, GarageBand, you can use Logic. Logic would allow you to import video,
Yeah.
and then you can edit the video inside Logic. But honestly, most people aren't going to spend the money on Logic. What they're going to do is they're going to use iMovie if they have an iPhone or an iPad, and then within those two, you can actually do picture-in-picture and some of those, so you
Yes.
can actually move between your different shots. And it is free. It's free software. So knowing how to use that free software is actually a really good thing too, because that's part of it is shooting your video, but understanding that, hey, the next step
Yes.
of this is going to be, how do I share this
Yeah,
out?
iMovie is going to be your friend for
Yeah,
sure.
It's free. It's on all of the Apple devices. If you have an iPhone or an iPad or any of those, you learn to use it. It requires very minimal usage. Plus, here's a caveat. If you live near an Apple store, there's a thing called Today at Apple. I'm going to put it out there. They are free classes, and we will teach you how to use iMovie.
Yes.
So for free. There's free classes at Apple. So you have the technology, go learn how to use it, put it together. It's a really great free offer. And you can learn how to shoot, edit, and put your stuff together. I highly recommend it. And you can book those as group sessions for a small group.
Not sponsored
I'm
or
not-
endorsed by Apple.
No, not at all. Just a highly recommend it.
All right, why don't you go over your product then?
Okay, so the product I brought, I forgot about that. Thanks, Coach.
You're just ready to keep on going.
Hey, I'm just gonna keep on going. Well, we're still within time.
Okay, good.
We're trying to condense. But what we have here today is I brought the X Vives, and I Blanco approved. So it's a wireless unit. I don't always use this, but I like to have it in my bag because I always bring a bag with me, and I'll do these together. This one is my Groove Gear bag,
Yep.
which is nice to have because I'll keep gear in here. So instead of like having to repack and try to fit things into my gig bag all the time, I leave some things in my car, some things are in here, but I'm able to move back and forth. But what I like to do is I keep this inside there. Now this is a receiver and a transmitter, and for the price point, these are pretty good because when you thought about like transmitters in the past, they're always pretty expensive. Like a good one was going to run you at least $500. Like if you look at the really good ones.
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
even more.
A really good setup, sure. You're going to look at about that.
I mean, and then normally when you talk about that, somebody who's using those good setups, they might be doing in-ears too. So they get into something else. But for us, I feel like this is really great to have in your bag and making sure it's charged. That's the other side of it. Because if it's not charged and you have it, what's the point? But having this and being able to decide at the moment, like, hey, do I want to go wireless? Now there is a loss of signal to some degree whenever you go wireless.
Yep.
It just is. Now it's improved over the years. It's way better than it was in the zeros and the 90s, but it has improved. Now this is I feel like these are a quality product. This is available. I think I got it from Musician's Friend, but very cheap. I've had this for probably like almost 8 years now. These are really solid. It works very easily. One side plugs into your amp or your pedal board, and the other side into your bass.
Yeah, I've only ever had one set break on me.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you bought two of these?
I've had two sets, yeah.
Okay, this is my first set I've ever had. Now, I don't use them hard. I don't use them all the time. And I'm very sparing on when I use them. I'll probably use them for Music Fest because why not? Be a little wireless, move around a little bit.
Yeah.
But it's nice to have these, and it's a good feature to have in your bag. What do you think?
Well, for me, I'm with you where it's cheap. It's a solid, cheap product. And I don't mean cheap in a bad way. I just mean cost effectively, and it makes the most sense. I feel that the plastic is probably where they cheap out on the whole thing, because it feels like it's cheap, but they do last a long time as long as you take care of them. For me, I think most people maybe have some type of a car adapter, where whether it's a cigarette lighter or an actual AC plug, and these come with a dual charger. So literally if you're on your way to the gig, you could charge these things. Give it like 20, 30 minutes if you're in the car. I've done that before, and it's worked fine for me.
Work for you, okay? Because
Yeah.
normally the car is only about 5 watts. So
Well,
that's a very slow
I'm
wattage.
saying that, like, you know, just to give it like a little bit of extra
Yeah.
charge, especially if you're doing like multiple gigs in a weekend, you'll get maybe 2 gigs out of this on a single charge.
Yeah.
Which is decent. You know, it's pretty good
For a new
But like,
set.
well, I'm just saying, like, you
Batteries.
take care,
Yeah.
care of the thing. Like, it's fine. And I would just say that to add, like, yeah, if you're in between gigs and stuff like that, it's just giving like a little extra boost in between. At least then you know it's not gonna, like, you know, fail you on the second gig.
Yep.
That's usually how I tend to look at it. And then, like, when I'm home for the week and whatnot, like, then yeah, I'm gonna go and throw them on the charger and let them fill up. Now, do I use them on a regular basis? No, not anymore.
No.
I used to use them
Yeah.
just about for almost everything.
See, I don't.
And there was, you know, the slightest bit of loss that you could hear. But as you know, Steve and I were talking about before, like before we started recording, you can actually correct that. You can correct that with your EQ. Like, it's not something that's going to be totally noticeable necessarily.
Yeah.
So you know, if you wanted to get a wireless and you were like looking at like the $100, $200, even up to $500 like sets, you don't have to go that route. Like, yeah, you'll have like this little like thing sticking out of your bass or like your guitar or anything like that. But honestly, like, it's not that noticeable. It's just like a little red light that
You
kind of
just fold
pops
it
up.
back a little bit,
Yeah,
too.
that's all. If I was plugging it in, instead of like poking it out like that, I just kind of like tilt it in, and then like if I could get it next to like the edge of the body,
Yeah, you don't even see
you
it.
don't even notice it.
No.
So like, and that's totally fine. So
I
like,
think
I would
they-
say it's like, what, they're like $40,
Nah,
40,
they're
50 bucks.
They're like 80, I think.
80?
Yeah, it's like $80 last I
Oh.
checked. Maybe
Okay.
they've come down a little bit since then, but you can normally find them on Musician's Friend or
I've gotten mine
Sweetwater.
off Amazon.
Amazon. Okay,
Yeah,
or
like, so I
Sweetwater.
mean, like, that's where I found them initially. You know, so like, and I remember when we found these things, I think we both showed up to like meet up together. It's like, oh, I want to show you this. Like, I actually bought the exact same
Yeah.
thing. Like, we must have had the same like ads like being like
Yeah.
shown to us at the time or something when we found them. But yeah, like, those things they're solid. It's a great entryway into doing wireless.
All right, so let's recap. So so I'm going to call these 2 separate items here.
Yeah.
Because they're 2 very different things. Now, this, it's awesome, but is it necessary?
I say yes.
I say yes it too. I think that you need at least a good camera that has a good quality
Microphone.
Yeah, because if you're putting together a press pack, because let's be honest, like the days of going in with a CD to a bar or a restaurant trying to book a gig, nobody wants that anymore. It's,
Yeah.
you're sending a file. They want to see a video.
Yep.
And they want a video that they can hear you. So, and normally the video they want it cut 20 seconds of each song.
Something.
So something with good audio. This, on the other hand, it's awesome, but is it necessary?
No.
No, I agree. I think you can find ways to make it work. I think in some cases, bringing this to a gig, it also sticks out somewhere when you're trying to watch stuff, because I've had drummers bring out cameras and audience members have walked off with them. So
Yeah, that's a whole thing too. You got to be careful about where you're putting your
yeah,
stuff.
you got to watch it, because sometimes somebody comes through and they just kind of meander out with it.
Yeah, I've seen
And-
people bring like 3 or 4 DSLRs with them, and I was shocked that they're leaving them in the streets, just like set them like, you're insane.
Yeah.
You're insane, dude.
Yeah, that's not a good option. Now the X Vive, the wireless receiver and transmitter. It's cool. It's
Yeah.
awesome. Is it necessary?
I think not.
I would agree. I think that it is a nice to have. Good in a pinch.
Sure.
I've actually even been on a situation where I left my cable and I was like, oh, at least I have this.
Yeah, that's a solid backup then.
And it fits in my bag as long as it's charged. You know.
Yeah. So there are caveats that go along
Yeah.
with it. You got to make sure it's charged if you are going to have it as a backup.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was lucky and it worked out really well. So those are our 3 items. And of course, I just, as a little thing, I brought out my bag because I had them in my bag, and I keep them right inside my bag with
Yeah.
a charger.
There you go.
Groove Gear.
Yep.
Groove Gear bags definitely are worthwhile. So I think that, so we have one necessary, one not so necessary, one which is nice to have but not necessary either, but
Right.
worth having. I mean, these 2 are not going to break the bank on you.
Right. If
So
there
even
was
if you
something
get
that
it-
was cost effective, you can check 2 boxes instead of 1, it would be those.
Yeah, this is you should have a Zoom. it's just worthwhile.
And they're a great company too, because I remember when one of my Zoom cameras broke, like there was the bottom plate of it broke, which I mean, like honestly, not even like that big of a deal, but like it like snapped in half, and I didn't want to like have like the SD card exposed,
Yeah.
but I just reached out to him like, yeah, no worries, we'll send you a new one. And I was like, oh, well, I also need one of these like where is it, the hoods, like one of like the hood covers. And they're like, yeah, we'll send one of those out to you too.
That's-
no charge, no shipping, nothing like that. It's like, oh,
I think Zoom is Musician's Friend. I think that's
oh yeah, they owned by the same.
yeah, it's the same company, I believe.
Okay, well, yeah,
so
good
makes
people.
sense. Yeah, I've had really good experiences with them. I think that they are solid.
Okay, great.
So, all right. So I think that brings us to our end for today
Yep.
for episode 5.
Yes.
So I'm Steve,
And I'm Sean.
and this is Working Class Zeros, and we want to thank our host, Bass Musician Magazine, again for putting up this video for us and for having us. And make sure that you check out Bass Musician, because it is the place to know what is going on. So Bass Musician Magazine is the place. We'll make sure that you like, subscribe, follow what's coming up. They're always on top of the late breaking, interesting news in the bass world,
Yep.
with lots of stories, lots of lessons. There's always good stuff happening from Bass Musician Magazine. And I guess we'll see you on the grind, right?
Yeah. See
Till
you
the
out
next
there.
time. Be good.